have the graph, I can immediately write vertex form. Everything I need to know to write vertex form is on this graph. So I'm going to jump over here and say f of x equals y equals. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to look at my graph and find the vertex. So my vertex here is at -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at -5, -4. Here's another trick. I don't need to look for A. Any one of these forms will tell me what A is, because A is the same across the board. So if A is 1 here, A is 1 here. But I can check the graph and notice that the pattern 1, 3, 5, 7 is there. So I could check that either way. So now I can write the vertex form. A is 1, so I don't have to write anything. X plus 5 squared minus 4. And that's it. Standard form. I'm just going to transfer this into standard form. So I'm going to take this. X plus 5 squared minus 4. I'm going to rewrite it as x plus 5 times x plus 5 minus 4. Whatever you need to do here. If you need to do the box, do the box. If you do foil, do foil. If you can do it in your head by now, do that. X squared plus 10x plus 25 minus 4. And then your last step. And you guys can keep working on it. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. Alright, so notice, no matter the form, A equals 1, A equals 1, A equals 1. If we have any of the forms or the graph, I have A. Alright, here, you have 2 of these on your test. So you're given standard form, you have to tell me vertex form, and you have to graph it. So we're going to do all this together. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for this one. The first thing we learned to do when we had this was identify that this is the y-intercept. That's what we can get from there, meaning the point 0,6 is on this graph. So I'm going to go ahead and go do that. I'll add some color to that. Next thing we can get out of this one is our A, B, C. A is -2, B is -4, C is 6. It's a really important test for me because it's the second summative of the first quarter, so I'm going to make sure that I sketch this downward facing parabola so I remember what it should look like because my A is negative. And then from there, step 2 was to find that axis of symmetry. So x equals -b over 2a. So 4 divided by 2 times -2. X is -1. So I'm just going from this to the graph, and then I can easily do the others. I'm going to go over here and sketch an axis of symmetry right there at x equals -1. This is a function, so any input does give me an output. So I have an input. I know that -1 exists on this parabola, so I'm going to plug it in to figure out what the y is. So my vertex will be -1 and then a y. So let's find that. Excuse me. So -2 times -1 squared minus 4 times -1 plus 6. Mental math, if you're doing it on paper, tune me out. If you want to do mental math with me and get better at that, do it with me. -1 squared is 1 times -2, so this is just -2. plus 4 is negative and negative. So negative 2 plus 4 takes me up to 2 plus 6 more. So my vertex is at negative 1, 8. If you're still doing it on paper, that's totally fine. Whatever you need to do. So now I can mark that on my graph. Negative 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're all the way up there. And since this is the axis of symmetry, I also know this point exists on the parabola. This one's going to get skinnier. And then 1, 3, 5 is not going to be my pattern. Instead, it's going to be 2, 6, 10. So we already went down 2, so I need to go down 6, and I'm done. And we can graph it. You feeling good? Go ahead and write your vertex form. F of x equals, my a will stay the same, so negative 2. X plus 1 squared plus 8. I got that directly from my vertex. This one's wonderful because when I graphed it, it told me exactly where it crosses the x-axis. That is my factored form. So I can write this whole equation just by looking at my graph. F of x equals, my a stays the same, x. I am crossing this x-axis at negative 3 and at positive 1, so I'm going to write plus 3 minus 1. And that's it. Alright, make sure you're writing with pencil and try that bottom row on your own. If you make a bunch of mistakes, so what? We'll fix it today together. See if you can work across the bottom. Working from vertex, so the first thing I would do is graph it. And then write my other two forms. So square this and then put the negative on the outside of what you get here and distribute it here. Yes, that's okay. Okay. If you can send me an email, it's the best way for me to get my work put it in. Can you do something on that from after that? Okay. Okay, so whatever cost x-axis is where these all of it. Right? Oh, that vertex is way over here, huh? Alright. See some people still working and talking about it, so I'm giving you a little bit of time. I'm going to work it quietly up here. Alright, check your answers, ask questions. Yep. Same all the way, yep. Never have to worry about it again. It's easy to find the A on the graph. It's easy to find it in any of the forms. It's right there for you. So I'll zoom out. There we go. So no matter what box you jump to next, you can get to another one. Yes, bud? Mm-hmm. Yep. Because remember, it's the opposite of those, because when I have to solve for these x-intercepts, that's wherever y equals 0. So when I set x minus 8 equal to 0, it's actually x equals 8. So it's actually the positive 8. So wherever we're crossing the x-axis, it's the opposite of that. That's what's been solved. Okay? So great question. You won't make that mistake on the test. A lot of people were asking me that when you were doing it. So this one, the easiest way to work through this was to go from vertex form to graphing. Because as soon as I graphed the vertex and I went down 1 over 1, I was crossing the x-axis. And that immediately gave me the answer for this one. I had everything I needed to write that in. And then from this one, I can either multiply these guys and get this answer, or I can do what a lot of you have gotten really good at, taking vertex form to this. It does not matter which one of these I do. I'm going to get the same answer here for standard form. All right, cool. Take 2 minutes to process, break, whatever you need to do before we move on. Alright guys, on the back of that first page, you should see this at the top. It copied poorly, but we need to talk about something before we go back to practicing factoring. I was driving to work this morning and I was like, what is the disconnect here? Why do kids have so much trouble understanding when they're supposed to multiply versus when they're supposed to factor, especially on quizzes? I had a lot of people in Warhawk Time yesterday asking me these questions, and I really want to break it down to hopefully make it make a little bit more sense with the most basic example possible. So if we're multiplying, if I say to you 3 times 4, and I write it like that, and I tell you multiply or simplify this, you would tell me this equals 12. The inverse of that, the opposite of that, is me giving you 12 and saying factor it. So then you would tell me 3 times 4, 2 times 6, 1 times 12. It gets a little harder when I say x plus 3, x plus 4. This is the same thing. I'm asking you, and the quiz and the test will say simplify. So I'm asking you to multiply these. The same as I was asking you here. That's what that means, multiply. So if I do this, if I do the box method, if I do FOIL, x squared plus 7x plus 12 is what you'll get. This is the answer. Some of you guys get to this answer and then you ask me, am I supposed to factor it? No. You were supposed to multiply and tell me the answer. The same way I ask you what's 3 times 4, you tell me 12. If I say what's this times this is your answer. The opposite, same way. If I give you this guy, x squared plus 7x plus 12, I am asking you, what is multiplied together? That's what factor means. What are the factors of this? So that's going the opposite direction. And you know it has to be a binomial times a binomial. And you guys have different methods that you're doing this, and that's fine. A lot of you guys like to plug in what you have. And then you like to say, well, I know it's an x and an x. What multiplies to give me 12? That's going to give me that 7 there in the middle. And you might try a 2 and a 6, and you're like, nope, that's not going to work. And then you eventually figure out that it's 3 and 4. And that's fine if you like to do the guess check in the box. A lot of you guys like to do the factors of 12 that add to give me 7. And if you do it that way, that's essentially the exact same process. 3, 4, and then you have it. So again, you will see this on your test. It is asking you to multiply to give me the answer. Then you will be asked to factor, which means you're breaking it apart. Cool? Alright, let's turn it over, a little bit more review, and then you can have some study time on your own. I highly recommend you do everything that I'm doing on this last page, because even if you're very comfortable with it, we want to eliminate any mistakes. So numbers 1, 2, and 4, those are on your test. Do them now. We'll do them together in a sec. 1, 2, and 4. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 4. Get to the answer. Whatever mistakes you're going to make, I want you to make them now instead of Friday. Mm-hmm. All right, I had 8 kids in the 3rd period multiply number 1. Did anyone in here multiply number 1? Yeah, that's why I'm doing it today. I want you to do it today. All right? We did this on the quiz, so today this says add these guys, so do not multiply them. When we're asked to subtract, the subtraction sign no longer just means subtraction in math. It means the opposite of. So it's saying the opposite of these combined with those. So we have to distribute that. So we get plus 6x squared minus x. And then any questions on number 4? All right, and I am recording this, so at any point that you're studying, you can grab these notes too. All right, number 3, am I going to add, subtract, multiply this? Multiply, right? This is just like the 3, the 4 that I showed you. It's written side by side with no operation in the middle. That means multiply. So go ahead and do that however you prefer. Let's get to the right answer on this one together. Check your answer, find mistakes. A lot of mistakes here are typically related to negative, positive. And then number 5 is a really basic factor one. I wrote the answer up. You can copy it down and you can try it on your own later if you need to. Let's flip over the rest of our review. All right, you have 10 seconds to do 6, 7, and 8. 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1. difference of squares. So do yourself a huge favor for the rest of your high school math classes and recognize those so you don't spend a lot of time on those. It's not going away. Factoring will be a huge part of pre-calc, an even bigger part of calculus. So get good at it now. If there is a plus sign in the middle, can I do this trick? No. All right, guys. Let's do a couple more together, the more difficult factoring ones, so you feel comfortable with that. The number 9. There's a number here, so I can still do this x, but I just have to remember to multiply those. So the factors of -10, that will add to give me 9. And the purpose of doing it on one like this is so I can figure out what this used to be to factor by grouping. So the factors of -10, so I'm going to say 10 and 1. Which one of those should be negative in order for me to have a positive 9? Right, good. So I'm just going to rewrite 2x squared plus 10x minus 1x minus 5. So we just broke apart this so that I can now factor by grouping. So this is still just the 12. What was multiplied together to give me 12? 3 and 4. What was multiplied together to give me this? We got to deconstruct a little bit to figure that out. So then we learn to separate them out. The greatest common factor of these two terms, so what can I divide both of these by? 2x, good. So I'm going to pull out that 2x. On the inside, I'm going to have x plus 5. The next one, when there's a negative there, we want to pull that out. So what's the only thing I can pull out of these next two? -1, good. And I'm going to get x plus 5 on the inside when I divide. So explaining this again, this common factor means that x plus 5 was multiplied both by 2x and also by -1. So I need to write it as this guy gets multiplied by both of these terms, and I've factored it. Yeah, but
Does it matter the order in which we
nope. Nope. So does 4 times 3 or 3 times 4 make a difference? No. So this times that or that times that doesn't make a difference, okay? All right, so let's try 10. Same deal. I'm going to factor it the same way. I need to break apart this -15a. So on the top, I'm going to have -54. So I'll give you a second. That one's a little harder. I'll give you a second to try to think through the factors for this. Work through those. Like our instinct is to say 6 and 9 because those do add to 15, but both of these have to be negative, so that's not going to work. So think through the other factors of 54. If you have your computer open, you can do 54 divided by 5. Not going to work. 54 divided by 7, 54 divided by 8, whatever you need to do until you see if there's any that will work. Hi. Any ideas yet? Did we figure any out? Yeah. Yep. 54 divided by 3 is what? There we go. 18 and 3. So I need -18 plus 3. Good job. So I'm going to rewrite it. -2a squared minus 18a plus 3a plus 27. So I just broke that apart so I can factor by grouping, separate it, meet me at the answer. What would happen if we tried every single number and I could not find anything up here? I could not find any numbers that would make this work. What do we call it when we cannot factor it? What is the number 7 called? If the only factors are 1 and 7, what do we call 7? What type of number? Prime number. So when we cannot factor something, that's also called prime. That means only 1 times itself will give you that. Cannot factor it. So we just write prime. Okay, number 11. We have not had to do this step yet, but we need to remember to do it. Is it in standard form? It is. Who remembers what step 2 is? Right, does it have a GCF? So we haven't had to do that yet, so I wanted to remind us of that. What would be the greatest common factor of these 3 terms? 5. Thank you so much. So go ahead and write that out there. 4n squared minus 12n minus 7. And then just so I don't get it counted wrong, on the answer space at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and write that 5. So now when I play the X game, I need the factors of negative 28 that would add to give me negative 12. I think that one will do.